Okay, here we go with the personal financial planning process. And haven't really started talking about any content area yet. We're just really trying to set the framework for an understanding about how this whole piece works. You probably have seen this picture. You'll see it a lot more as we go through the course. But the process itself is circular. It's always a piece of once you monitor something, you have to continue around and revise again. So we have to go through those that stage, if you will. I think another little place to kind of look at this is the CFP refers to things called job task domains, and they essentially set up the examination based on these 8 different task areas. So if you actually go down here, if we click on this, and you can obviously do that as well. I don't know what will happen if I do that now, but if you click on this site, you'll see you're in a place where it looks at the exam job task domains, and it talks about how much of the test is, but you get to see some of the content area within the test for a CFP. So how do we establish relationships, right? So we have to qualify the potential client. And I guess one of the important questions about qualify, what does that actually mean? And quite frankly, I think when you meet a person that either is asking you for help or you're searching them out to see if you could help them, just by a casual introduction, you might not know that it's a good fit. You may not have the services they need. They may not have the ability or the desire to make a connection so that you can work together. But when you qualify, basically you need to understand their goals. You need to be able to describe to them what you're going to do for them. Explain the scope of your service. And again, in the end, you want to make sure that you can serve their needs. So the success of this of any professional relationship, but of course, we're talking about financial planning here, is you have to have a good client planner match. I mean, a perfectly good plan without this relationship won't last. It won't work. So in the engagement, right, we have to figure out, well, who are the parties that are going to be involved? What is the scope of the engagement? Exactly what is it that they want from us? Let me click on my pointer here so I have a pointer so we can mark these off. We have to define responsibilities. I think this is really a critical part here, because it's not just what I say I'm going to do. We also want to write down and identify what the client's going to need to do. I mean, they're not just bystanders here. They're going to have an active role in this engagement. How long is this going to take? What kind of information do I need to give them? And one of the things, and we'll talk about this, is compensation. How do I get paid? Right? We have to provide any disclosures. As a certified financial planner, there are certain disclosures that have to be provided before the engagement actually gets started. So, again, when we're talking about the gathering of data, right, one of the questions I always have is, is the data comprehensive enough? Do you have enough information to do what you say you're going to do? With respect to the client's financial condition, understand that clients are going to hold stuff back. They're never going to tell you probably everything that you really want to know. Personality, dreams, and fears, a very qualitative kind of question. Most people have really given up on their dreams. And quite frankly, most of them get their information from friends and family. So this frequently, stirs up some fears, right? That they're worried about what's going to happen when they don't have all the information because they're relying on other people. My dad once told me, said, don't ever take any advice from anyone that's just as screwed up as you are, right? You want to make sure you have somebody you can talk to. That's why you're going to a financial planner, to get some answers about the future that is independent of anything else. Obviously, we want to know about short-term and long-term goals. We want to be able to prioritize those. And of course, in the end, we want to create a set of strategies. Figure out, how can we go about doing this? We're going to gather qualitative data, right? These no numbers are involved here, right? We want to talk about goals, objectives, core values, time horizons. Actually, this goals and dreams, I think, sometimes it's just, a client sometimes think it's a waste of time. It's kind of silly, but, we just want to ask them, think outside the box. If money wasn't an issue, don't think about your current position. What are the things that you really would like to see? Maybe we can get some of those things, but we can't get to them until we actually have written them down and we understand what they are. Are there any constraints that we have to worry about, right? On the investment side, maybe some of the constraints are maybe they don't want to invest in things that have anything to do with alcohol or tobacco or defense industry or the military in general. So maybe there are certain constraints on investments that we can make. What kind of risks do they have, right? Do we understand how they even feel about risk or what their concerns are there? On the other side, there's quantitative data, right? We need to know their assets and liabilities. We need to know about their insurance. We need to know about benefits. Certainly income tax statements can be pretty helpful. What about the retirement accounts or legal documents for their estate? All the things are part and parcel of creating a plan, a program to show them. So, how do we ultimately identify missing data, right? I mean, first of all, I think one of the things is we have to realize that there's almost always going to be additional information that we need. There's always going to be something that's lost. One of the things that I found out is it's nice if you have a checklist, right? When you meet a person, they say, well, what is it that you need from me? It's nice just to be able to give them a little piece of paper that says, look, these are the 12 things that I need. If we need more, we'll talk about it later, but for right now, that's what I need. Later you can come back and find the missing data, but there's always a subset to get started so you can at least get the process moving. And again, if you're not able to, get the data that you need, in the end, you may have to modify the engagement, or quite frankly, you might have to just walk away. There are times, not many, but there are a couple of times when I've had to walk away from clients because, for one reason or another, most of the time it was just a poor attitude, but they really didn't want to participate. I said, well, you're asking me for help, but you're not willing to give me anything. How can I help you if you don't help yourself? So, again, moving on now. I mean, that's just a critical part, is understanding that there is going to be missing data. We have to obviously recognize that the future is uncertain, right? That there's certain assumptions that we're ultimately going to make. Some of those assumptions are made by the client, some are made by the planner, and some are going to be brought together and thought up about between the two. But regardless of that, whatever the assumptions are, they have to be reasonable and supportable. There has to be something that backs up those assumptions. Saying that the stock market is going to earn a 20% rate of return for the next 10 years just really doesn't make any sense. It's not reasonable. It's not supported. So our assumptions have to fall into those kinds of guidelines. So what kind of assumptions do we make? We have to make assumptions about risk. How do these people think? What is their understanding of risk?